Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of In the Prog Seat. It's Tuesday night. We've got a special show for you tonight. In the house, we've got Stephen Reid all the way from Scotland. We got Eric Porter from New York, George Lamie and Louis Nasser from Chicago, and from that state of New Jersey, the doctor of Prog, Mr. Ken Golden from the Laser's Edge and Sensory Records. Greeting, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. Very good.
I'm
Good
doing
to see
okay.
everybody.
Ready to talk about Prog albums we freaking hate?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
So we have decided, we've been doing this show for a few months now, and we generally always talk about the stuff we love. We gush about this album and that album and this band and that band. And in Hudson Valley Square's tradition, we've decided it's time to talk about the shit that we don't like much. So we've each picked out 5 Prog albums that for whatever reason just don't do a thing for us. And we're going to go through them starting at number 5 and make our way to number 1. I don't know if anybody put theirs in any order of preference. I kind of didn't, but I don't think it really matters. So we'll each go round and round and round and round till we get to our main selections. And at the end, if we have any honorable mentions, we'll throw those out as well. We're going to let Louis go first. We're going to go Louis, George, Ken, Eric, Stephen, and myself, and then we'll go round and round. So Mr. Nasser, what do you got?
All right. So Prog albums that I hate. I've been waiting for this. I was not gonna miss this show. I think that I need to start off slow but definite. And I'm just gonna open up with Yes, Heaven and Earth. I think that I hate that album not only because it's insipid, bland, it's all softies, it really doesn't go anywhere. But I think part of the reason why I really hate it is because the traditional Yes fan will buy a dead cat as long as it's got a Yes logo on it. And that is something that's always irritated me, because these guys have a lot of talent and they've made so many good things through the years. Admittedly many years ago, but I would like them to at least remember that in some way. And but the fans don't demand anything, so therefore they get nothing. So my number 5, absolute stinker of an album. I don't own it. I listen to it, and that's some time I'm never gonna get back in my life. That is Yes, Heaven and Earth.
It is pretty bad. I will say, and for everybody watching who has been asking me nonstop for the last 3 weeks, I did get the quest in today. So, and I will say it's way better than Heaven and Earth.
But isn't that damning with very faint praise? Like, I mean, how much better do you have to be better than that fucking turkey?
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, this might be the best thing they've done in the last, best of the last couple. So, but more on that next week. So
I have to admit, I've never heard Heaven.
Yeah.
Well, you're smarter than me, Ken.
I mean, I was warned off it early on, and I just,
never heard it.
Yeah. So
no reason to.
My number 5.
Cool.
Yeah. I've heard it. It's not on my list. It could well be on the list.
Yeah, it could be on mine too. Yeah. Not to say I don't have a Yes album on my list, but more on that later. George, what do you got?
All right. We have impromptu production meetings of a sort on Messenger. So I brought this topic up because it's my favorite HVS show that I've ever seen, and apparently a lot of people agree. It's got 41,000 views and 1,000 comments, which is good numbers.
Yes.
I've watched it a few times, and one person's approach that I liked on there was Chris Sallows, because he went for the truly popular albums. He was working off the RIAA sales numbers. So I wanted to do that too, go for really popular albums. The sales numbers aren't going to work for Prog, so I went off the Rachel Music top 40 albums, Prog albums of all time. So I figure I'll start off with a really high one. In the Court of the Crimson King. I don't like this album. I don't hate this album, but I don't like it either. I've never felt the need to own it. Obviously, I like the opener. Everybody likes the opener. I like the closer too. Great epic. but the stuff in the middle is a snooze-a-thon for me. I just can't get into any of it, and I go back to it.
Oh, this is going great. I love it.
Trying and trying, and
Can we replace him with Anthony?
there's no there.
No,
for me.
this is perfect. This is perfect.
Wow, I am shocked. Holy cow.
And I actually
I
like.
put these on so I could see better tonight. I can't hear properly now.
I need to take my picture down now.
Wow.
That's my 5.
Wow.
I love you, George.
It started
Hey.
out strong.
I love that record, by the way, but I love the fact
Everybody
that
does.
you just went for the jugular,
Yep.
like an African vampire that hasn't had a meal in a long time. Well done, sir.
We could probably stop right there, right?
I guess so. Good night, everybody.
The end.
Hey, Sydney went moving pictures for the HBS one. I had to start out. Boom.
There you go. All right.
Sydney's moving pictures was rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sydney, if you're watching, I think you just got bested here. So, and George, now all the hundreds of people who applaud you every week for coming up with the greatest, most obscure albums ever are going to be like, what the fuck is he talking about now?
No. Everything he's ever recommended is still on the money.
True.
So
Absolutely.
fuck that. No. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
But this is in the court of Crimson King we're talking about.
I understand, but it's a matter of personal preference.
I know. No, I'm just joking. Yeah. Wow, that's a bold move, my friend.
Ballsy, fucking ballsy. I like it.
All right. Well, yeah, we're off with a bang here. So, Ken, what do you got?
Well, I don't have much show and tell. And I want to say when Pete originally proposed this to me, he said albums that we can't stand. Well, I took it to the next level to albums we hate. So I've been building up this hatred for 2 weeks now. So,
Yeah.
Like I couldn't sleep at night. I started thinking about whittling down, from 10 to, but it was actually pretty hard because the stuff you don't like, you don't listen to. But there was enough stuff that I was able to come up with. So my number 5, and I don't have this wasted plastic in my collection anymore. Genesis, We Can't Dance.
Yes, thank you.
That one went into the recycle bin right away. So I mean, there you go.
Ooh.
That was Genesis in name only. That was really the Phil Collins band featuring special guest Tony Banks and Mike Rutherford. It was like there was no fire in that album, just some whiffs of some burning embers. There were a couple of long tunes on there where you thought, oh wow, maybe something's gonna happen here. And what disappointment. It was just like these 10-minute ballads that just went into nowhere.
On, my heart. Come on. You don't like it?
That was crap. And then, and if they would have let like Sturmer and Thompson play on the album, maybe it would have had some life. But I mean, that record was DOA. That was just a lifeless corpse of an album.
Yes.
They were getting worse and worse, and I kept buying them. And I got to that thing, and I'm like, oh, I can't. I either bought it and trashed it, or I didn't even bother at all. That was
Basically, you couldn't dance with Genesis anymore.
no, that was bad.
Neither could
man.
Genesis dance with Genesis.
It wasn't Genesis. It wasn't. I was actually going to say like the Genesis album or Invisible Touch, and it's like if you could go to those albums, you could find 1 or 2 tracks that were actually kind of cool. I remember liking like Home by the Sea, stuff like that. It was kind of neat. And then so you could say, okay, well, I don't hate it. It's a sucky album, but it's got 1 or 2 good tracks. There's nothing good on this album.
I agree.
I love the drums on that album. I'm really sorry. Love them.
That was a bad record. I'm getting douche chills just thinking about that. That was a bad record.
Yeah. This is a very forgettable.
Oof.
Yeah.
There you go. All right.
Okay, but here's the best part. It gets worse as the show goes on today.
Man. All right, Eric. What do you got? Number 5.
Well, I like George's approach, and the way I looked at it was we talk about a lot of bands that we love, and a lot of those bands have turds, like Lewis brought up with Yes. My first choice is a band that I love, but at the same time, I think this album was an experimental album they needed to make to get to where they got, but I can't listen to it. I don't have a prop because I don't own it. And it's Pink Floyd Umaguma. I can't stand it. I don't
Wow.
like a thing on it.
The second album is great. The second album's a live album. It's a great live album.
I can't listen to it. It just sounds dated and old to me, and I can't.
Umaguma.
And I got notified late, so I made sure I went back and listened to it today because I don't have it. So I brought it up on YouTube. It does nothing for me. I don't like any of it. It's boring. At that point, I don't even think they were good enough musicians to do something experimental. I just, I don't like it. Don't like a thing on it.
Doesn't it have Grantchester Meadows on that one?
It does.
I like that too. I don't know.
I
Nick
like parts
Mason
of, I
stuff.
like parts of it a lot, and there are parts of it I don't like at all.
Yeah, the Nick Mason stuff sucked.
I think it's an album that improves proportionate to your consumption of weed. I think that when you proceed to light up the weed, it gets a lot better. But otherwise, it's a difficult listen. I would agree with that.
I like the live album. I think the live album's good.
Yeah, it's the most of the least. Honestly, I think.
I think they needed to do that record to get where they got, but I can't listen. I just can't listen to it.
Yeah,
And also a double album. It's a bit much,
It's like walking through the album. That's what I mean. It's just, It feels like such an effort. And I don't dislike it, but it's not an album I can listen to often.
Yeah, like when was the last time you played it, Stephen?
Oh.
I mean, years ago, right? This is kind of the point, right?
That long ago, I would just have to make a number up. So let's say 12.
Well, I was thinking about that, Lewis, and I think the last time I listened to it was in college. So it might have been 86, 87.
That has the ring of truth for me too. Yeah.
All right, Stephen.
Well, we've all seemed to have taken slightly, not different approaches, but we've brought ourselves to it, shall we say. So I've used this to kind of work out some pet hates. Some of the things that I'm told I should love and I just can't. So I'm going to start with Neil Morse. And I know he's got a lot of fans, and I know that people love what he does. And I could have picked nearly anything from the solo catalogue. I mean, I prefer Spock's Beard after he left. He's a talented guy. He's a great songwriter. He's a fantastic arranger, and he bores me to death. I don't know why, particularly. It just all sounds cut and paste. It's all, and the album I chose, and there is a reason why I chose Momentum, not because I think it's his worst, not because the reason I chose it is because any album that contains a song where bloody tears rhymes with smoke and mirrors. What's a mirror? What's a mirror? I mean, even in Scotland, I say mirror. There's a U in mirror, and that's wrong. But it's not a mirror.
It's maybe they smoke meerkats in Tennessee. I don't know.
I don't know what he's doing, but it makes me cringe so bad. And the thing with me, with all the Morse albums, is you can go, wow, that's a great guitar solo. Do you know? And then there's songs that have got like, oh, the a cappella introduction, that's amazing. But then it's like, we'll put this bit here. We've not had a guitar solo for a while, so that can go in there. And you get to the end, and it's almost like someone's pressed a button that goes, Prog. And that's what comes out the other end. And I don't connect with very much that he's done. And I appreciate he's a very talented chap, but I just don't connect with very much that he's done. And Momentum makes the list purely on the back of me ears, because I just can't cope with that at all. I listened to that again today just to upset myself.
Is that worse than Jesus Christ the Exorcist?
Well, do you know, it's interesting. There are people that are good friends of mine that will say, oh, you just don't like his lyrical content. I'll put my hands up here and say that I love John Elefante's Defying Gravity. and you can't get a more Christian album than that. Do you know, it's not about that side of it before people say that it is. It's not. I just don't like it.
You're not the only one I've met who says that. So.
Yeah, really, as you can tell, I'm quite passionate about that too.
I'm loving this show. This is my favorite moment in SOP. I just want that to be on the record.
As George says, you're welcome. All right. My first choice of today. There were like 3 of their albums that I could have picked. And I generally like their catalog quite a bit, but they've got a couple real stinkers. And this is one of them. Canadian band Saga, The Beginner's Guide to Throwing Shapes. Late 80s, ridiculously overproduced, horrible drum machine sounds, horrible synthesizer sounds. You know, Ian Crichton's wonderful riffing and soloing in Scarecrow and Waiting in the Wings and Giant notwithstanding. This is not a good album. And there's horrible ballads on here. Yeah, don't like this. Like I said, they've got a couple of them that are not very good. I like this band a lot, but this is not it. I think that Saga, you know, missed that big moment to make it really big. And then the record label was kind of like, all right, you guys got to crank out some radio friendly stuff. And they kept going more and more in that direction. And yeah, no good. No good. I do own it though.
The 80s,
I just got it.
Shut on Prog, didn't it?
What's that?
The 80s shut all over Prog, didn't it?
Oh yeah, big time.
Sure. Pete,
They
I
had a
just got
string
in,
of bad ones.
Yeah.
today I just got in the reissues of was it Pleasure and the Pain, I think?
That's one. That's another stinker.
The other one was Steel Umbrellas.
Those are the 3
I don't know those
stinkers.
albums. Yeah, I don't know them, but they seem to be based on what the reviews. I looked them up, and everybody said that those particular albums are awful. It's great. So, yeah. So is that one worse than those?
They're all pretty bad. This might be the best out of them, but that's not saying much. There's 4 of them. There's 4 of them that are really bad, and this is one of them. So yeah, to be avoided.
I never heard it.
To be avoided. So all right, back to Lewis.
Okay. So the next record, I hate the fact that it exists because it doesn't have to exist at all. And it is, of course, I am talking about Gentle Giant, Giant for a Day. Gentle Giant is a band that did so much unbelievable music, you know? They could do no wrong in my book. Every one of the records had just so much cool shit. It was just like a barrage of fucking awesome. And then suddenly, for years, I want to also point out that for years I resisted listening to it because it was like you know, you don't want to find out that your heroes also shit the bed every now and then. Sometimes it's like it's just better to not find out. But in preparing for this episode, I broke down and I heard it. And I went through multiple, like I began like with like unbelieving that this was them. And then I just got into this murderous rage. Like, why the fuck would you do this? Right? Because there's no way this is gonna sell, regardless. Like the best thing you got going for you is that you are fucking unclassifiably awesome. Just do your thing, you know, and die with your boots on if death is indeed the conclusion. But I just hate that they chose to do that. And so they're a band I love, but that record is just unapologetically shite, and I hate it.
I agree.
I can't even think of a single song that I like, which is not normally the way that I think of Gentle Giant. So Gentle Giant, Giant for a Day is regrettably an album that I hate.
Spooky Boogie and maybe Rock Climber are somewhat passable.
But you see, but they're Gentle Giant.
Yeah, they
Like
should
they'd
have to do
be
stuff like this.
passable if it was fucking Saga or some other thing. Like, oh, Saga's being clever, right? But like in that era, but no, this is Gentle Giant. Like we have to. Everything is renormalized to the source, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. For me, that is just unacceptable.
To be like, you guys are young, so I didn't like Civilian. So for me, Giant for a Day, I just ignored it because they were just getting worse. You know what I mean? I thought
Civilian is the least of the most for me. Like I can listen to it. Yeah, but this one I just can't do it, man.
And if they were trying to write more radio-friendly material, there's nothing on there that would get played on the radio. Maybe maybe Words from the Wise is kind of clever, but
and I'm friends with Gary Green, and I like the guys. I had the opportunity to play in front of them once before, and these are great people, but it's just like now next time I see Gary, I'm gonna have to rib him over this.
Well, I've talked to Derek about it on a few occasions, and he knows the band knows it was a mistake. They readily admit it. Yeah, I agree with it. It sucks. It sucks.
Terrible.
All right, George, I'm almost afraid here.
Yeah.
Oh, this is good. I love it.
Yeah.
Number 4 is possibly rated even higher in some circles than my number 5 was. Miles Davis, In a Silent Way. Just believe me, I tried very hard to like that one. It just drones and drones. For me to say I don't like a record with John McLaughlin is like ridiculous, but I get nothing out of it, and I try every couple of years, and I just can't
And
find
it's like completely stupefied here. I've never seen that expression.
I am stupefied now. Now I'm not on board.
There's nothing normal about this show tonight. I got to tell you.
I picked a fusion one. Look at that.
Yeah.
You can hit me up with some more.
More blood pressure.
I'll bring
Got
it
you all
down.
riled up.
Yeah, this is good. We are discussing. Imagine that there's all these sacred cows that people just
Okay.
swear by, and all we're doing is just putting them in a bucket and throwing grenades into them, and then shooting the survivors.
Hey, Luis, let me tell you something. You better tell the nurse to get the paddles ready.
Yes.
This is why your blood pressure's high.
This is too funny.
The comments will be fun tonight.
Oh yeah. Oh, George, you're gonna be losing fans by the minute. Holy cow.
Oh no! I
You
insist.
could be gaining them.
This is great though. My God, I haven't laughed this hard in a while. All right, Ken, can you top that last one? I don't know.
Well, this one I think this would be pretty easy. I have a graphic for this one.
Thank you.
Pink
What is
Floyd,
wrong with the golden?
the
I'll
final
listen to
cut.
that over Umagoma, Ken.
Oh no! I mean, this is a bad album. So I like The Wall when it came out. It hasn't really aged all that well for me. But even when this album came out, it just sounded like outtakes from The Wall, which I think is pretty much what it is. It's not really a Pink Floyd album. I mean, it's almost hard to say The Wall was a Pink Floyd album. It's really a Roger Waters album, right? And then,
Well, I mean, Gilmore's playing on it, and Gilmore
of
did a
course,
lot of it.
it's a Pink Floyd album, but it's clearly Waters was in control of The Wall. This is a Roger Waters solo album. I mean, the other guys, they've checked out. I mean, wasn't Rick Wright fired? I don't even remember if he,
Rick Wright was strung out.
Yeah. So, I mean, if Waters didn't leave the band at this point, they would have kicked his ass out because this album sucks. I mean, this album is a piece of shit. And I haven't listened to this. When did this album come out? 1982 or something like that? 1983. That was the last time I listened to it. Bad album.
I am so not on board with that call, but I love it. I love it. This is
You like
exactly
that
what I
album?
want to hear.
You like that album?
I fucking love that album. I think The Gunner's Dream is one of the best Pink
The
Floyd
Gunner's
songs ever.
Dream. This guy just should have been in therapy, and he shouldn't have made an album.
Well, that was his fucking
That
therapy.
is therapy,
Ken.
right?
Yeah, but why do I have to suffer?
You don't. You just
You
have
know,
to
I'm not
listen.
Want it.
I'm not. If I'm in therapy, I got my own problems. Don't,
That's right. That's
you know,
right.
my father was in World War II. You don't see me making an album.
Well, but your
was
father
cruising-
lived.
My father was on a ship in the Pacific.
Yeah, but he didn't die.
No, he had some
Didn't
good. Actually, he lost his brother. Lost his brother in.
Okay, well, that's
yeah, he
sad.
lost his brother. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
bring it down, Lewis. I didn't mean to bring it down.
No,
But he
it's
lost-
okay. It's
lost-
okay. No,
lost-
yeah, I was pushing. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't like anything about it. Maybe did this have the cue that surround sound shit? I don't know.
It has I mean, the Gunner's Dream, the title track, the Fletcher Memorial Home. Those are great tunes, man.
Oh yeah, real great.
Yeah.
Awful.
Well, I guess you're gonna go like Triumph. Great for me to poop on, but nonetheless, they're great. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad someone else picked that because I always talk shit about that album and I wasn't going to do it today, but I'm glad someone did. So
I love it.
cool. All right, Eric, back to you.
So I like what Steven said with his first choice. So this is going to be the same route. This is a band that I was told, or this album I was told you have to get if you're a Prog fan. It's amazing. Now I love other things by this band, but this is always the one that people suggested, and I have it. So I bought it. I've listened to it a few times. I can't stand it. It's Soft Machine, Third. To me, I know I'm wrong. It sounds amateurish. I mean, I love bundles. I can't listen to Third. And I did go back and listen again today. The singing and what is it, Moon and June? Don't sing. And that's probably a tip of the cap to Armando, but it's awful. It's awful. The keyboard intro and the first track, it sounds like someone sitting in a living room, a kid banging on an organ that doesn't know how to play. I know I'm wrong. I know these guys are good musicians, and I've heard other things. Like I said, I love bundles. I can't listen to this record. I can't get through it.
I agree. The singing can be very grating, but I love that record though. It's just like, you know,
We're pissing you off tonight, Lewis, aren't we?
Shit, I'm thinking if Leonardo's watching, he's gonna be mighty upset right now.
I know. I had to say, I can't listen to. I hate it. I just don't like it.
Well, you know, it's acknowledged to be a horrible sounding album.
That
doesn't help. The production is awful. But Pete, remember when we did the Canterbury show? You know, that was a band in transition for Third. I mean, they went from the sort of quirky, poppy, prog, jazz, whatever it is that defines Soft Machine, and then they got more experimental, and that's like the transition record.
Yep.
You can't compare it to Bundles. I mean, Bundles, I mean, that was really Nucleus in disguise. I mean, it really, you know.
Yeah, very polished. I mean, I love Third, but you know, but it's not an easy listen. I will give you that.
I would say it's an acquired taste. I for me, it's not a hateful album. It's not one I reach for, but
yeah.
Cool. All right, Steven, back to you.
Well, I think I really should say welcome to the Pink Floyd Appreciation Society. So if you're offended that people on here hate an album that kind of set up where they went, oh my God, if you're offended that somebody hates kind of where it ended for many, but you should also be offended that I hate Piper at the Gates of Dawn. I hate it that much that I've got a special edition. That's how much I hate this album. I mean, I use this as a guiro. Right? That's how fantastic this album is. It's a beautiful thing. Just don't open it. I mean, people tell me that, you know, the Sid Barrett era, that's what it's all about. I'm maybe way too straight-laced, but I mean, how strung out do I need to be to hear people that are that strung out? I don't know. I know it lacks focus because, well, they lacked focus, but it lacks focus. There's no dynamics on it at all. I mean, you could just put the needle down and let it hum, and that's the whole record from start to finish. I don't like anything on it at all. I'm a committed person. If I'm going to put an album on, I'm going to listen to the whole album. I will suffer songs that I don't like because that's the sequence of the album. Someone spent hours and hours going, that should be here and that should be there, and the segue between here and that, and skip, 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 skip. Please turn it off. I just really, I mean, that's how focused this album is, right? I get the message, and I just dislike it so much. And I tried again today because I have tried every one of these albums again at some point in the last couple of days, just to make sure that I don't like them. Now, this was quite expensive. That's all I'm going to say. It was quite expensive. That
I agree.
don't like it. I find no redeeming features about that era of the band at all, and things like Arnold Lane and it drives me insane. No pun intended with what happened, but anyway.
And I'm sure there's people watching who that early stuff is the best stuff they ever did.
Yeah, well, I've been told that. I've been told that if you want to really understand Floyd, you need to go back to the start and understand the journey, and just no.
You know, it goes back to Soft Machine. I know people say for them, Soft Machine was like the first two albums, and then after that, nothing.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing.
Yep.
Just don't get it.
All right, my number 4. I love this band. Pretty much love every album they've ever done, except this one.
I know what it is.
I even went to see them on this tour because they were going to play the whole album, and I figured maybe it'll click for me live in concert. And it didn't. I left before the show was even over. I was bored, senseless. And I love this band. Dream Theater, The Astonishing. You know, Dream, do you agree, George?
Yep, terrible.
Terrible, right?
It is. It's astonishingly bad.
Yeah, it's a bore. And like I said, I love these guys, but it's just like there's nothing catchy on here. I don't like the riffs on here. Just the story is lame. You know what I like about it? The artwork is great. I bought a T-shirt the night I went to the show because I love the artwork. I was like, but now I'm like, yeah, great artwork. Yeah, I don't really like the album. Now I'm just wearing it because
The curse is real.
But I mean, and what made the show even worse is that they played the whole album start to finish without a word to the audience. Like, at least try and break it up a little bit and say something to us.
No, they didn't want to take you out of the story.
What's that?
They didn't want to take you out of the story.
I guess not. I got lost in the story. I was like, Jesus, I was going down the drain of the wherever I saw this in Radio City Music Hall. I don't even remember. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I remember it was like 3/4 of the way through this, and I looked at like the set list from the couple nights before, and they weren't playing anything else. And I looked at my watch, and I'm like, I can catch that earlier train if I get the fuck out of here right now. And you know what I did? I got the hell out of there. Like a half hour to go. And I was like, so yeah, I love Dream Theater, love the new one, like everything else they've ever done, love most of the stuff. This to me is an absolute bore. It's unmemorable. Nothing makes sense on here. I just don't like it. There you go.
New album's good.
New album's really good. Yeah.
But you stole my thunder. That was going to be my next pick, and everything you said is 100% correct. In fact, everybody that I know who's like, cloyingly positive about everything, right, had a similar thing to say. They went to the show and they had to leave early. To which I would only ask, why did you go to the show in the first place? Because, you had heard the record, right? You knew what it was about. You already knew the names of the characters. And if you write a concept album and you can't be bothered to think of better names, you already know it's shit, right? It is. And I have to say this, though. As much as I hate the record, I have to give James LeBrie a lot of props because he somehow muscled through that.
Yes, I
Like, had I been him, I think I would have been tempted to quit. But he did it. He muscled through it, and Nefario and whatever the fuck these guys are called, and it is a mystery to me. I can only imagine Mike Portnoy laughing somewhere, going, "Oh my God, this is what happened," right? Because But yeah, it's an awful record.
yeah.
But since you already picked it, I'm gonna pick something different because I have
Okay.
others. So since we already talked about the astonishingly awful, I'm just gonna move on and just say that since we're on the Pink Floyd bandwagon, I really think that there has never been a more aptly titled album than A Momentary Lapse of Reason. That, I mean, people always say that's not, the final cut is not a Pink Floyd record. Well, neither is that. That's a David Gilmour solo album with a bunch of guests with Nick Mason. And then at the end, they dragged in Rick Wright to give it some credibility, I guess. But it's mostly, the Roxy Music guy and Dave and other people, Guy Pratt and other people making that record. And I have never liked it, even though it has Tony Levin and even though it has a lot of people that I should like. I hear a song like The Dogs of War and I'm not on board. And that tour, to me, I've always said this, and it is going to piss off a lot of people, but I don't care. In a band like Pink Floyd, the sum of the parts was always greater than the individuals. And I think that as much as Roger Waters acted like the brain of the band and Gilmour acted like the heart, when you saw Pink Floyd without Waters, it was like Pink Floyd with a lobotomy. Like they had the pigs coming out in the wrong moments. There was a lot of spectacle, but none of it made sense. It was just, it was a lot of, it was the sound and the fury, right? But it was not really Pink Floyd, because Pink Floyd was always a story. There was always a message. And there was no message here. The message is, we are making a ton of money and life is good. And I really, really disliked that album for that reason. I think that when they did the Division Bell, the track itself sits better with all the other Floyd songs. Like it doesn't seem out of place when you put it in a set list with things like Welcome to the Machine and other things. But these songs, they're just not for me. So I really have had a very conflicted relationship with this record. And through the years, I finally just grew to Momentary Lapse of Reason for me is a record that I hate.
Very sterile sounding production.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it's I don't like it. There's nothing about that record I like.
I quite like it. I don't mind it at all.
I don't mind it either.
I didn't hate it. I didn't like it. It's
It's
just
not
there.
my favourite Floyd, but I quite like it, to be fair. I mean,
I thought
it's Floyd easy listening.
I thought the Vision Bell was better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing, but better.
Yeah. It had more of the spirit. I mean, Gilmour was angry. He was bitching at Waters. There was more, there was a message. It had a shape to it, Momentary Lapse of Reason is just amorphous bullshit to me,
I think it was just the excitement of having a Floyd record at that time, Lewis.
Oh yeah. Everybody,
I think
I
that's
bought
what
it.
got people fired up, but I agree
Yeah.
with you. It's kind of a,
I don't like it.
All right, George.
We can't wait.
Continuing on my path to Pete banning me from this show, I'm going to go with Supertramp, Crime of the Century.
oh, George.
Thanks, guys.
I've got a prop for you if you need it.
No, it's a bad start for me because I remember these two radio songs and I always hated them then. And Roger Hodgson to me is nails on a chalkboard. But after finding the channel, I re-examined this album, I don't know, 2 or 3 times now, and it's just flat for me. I don't dislike it, but does nothing for me at all. So that's it.
Has great production.
Sounds good.
Love Ken Scott.
I am a little speechless, but I once again the ballsiness of these choices is it cannot be put to question by anyone. This is great.
If you want to hate it as much as George does, but with better fidelity, get the Speaker's Corner pressing from Germany. That's the best pressing one.
Oh dear. Wow. I feel a bit lightheaded.
Tell me about it.
Beat that, Ken.
George is 3 for 3. Yeah, I know, right?
George, man, you're winning so far. So I don't know if a lot of people may know, but Emerson, Lake and Palmer is my favorite prog rock band. I'm a huge ELP fan, and they made this album, In the Hot Seat.
Oh,
This was not a good album on any level. So everybody was kind of going through the motions, or they were just lost. There's no pyrotechnics on the album. They brought in Keith Olsen to produce the album, and he kind of just eviscerated the band. I mean, supposedly the story is that I think it was Emerson brought in a long piece. He was working on like an epic, and Keith Olsen shot it down. Carl Palmer sounds like he's playing like a cheap drum machine. Greg Lake sounds pretty good. Everything's written, in his register, and he sounds fine. He always sounded fine in the studio. It was really live where he was towards the end where he was having problems. And Keith is no longer Keith, and ELP is no longer ELP. It's just, I start to get like a little weepy of it when I think about this record, because it's terrible. It's a terrible record. There's not, I mean, Man with the Long Black Coat, a Bob Dylan piece. It's just who wants to hear ELP just doing an album of ballads? It's just not a good record. It's not a good record, and I'm not sure why I even have it.
well, you're a fan, Ken.
I'm a fan. I'm looking at it. I'm saying, oh, it's a Japanese pressing. This will look nice on Discogs. I think I know what I'm doing tomorrow,
Yeah, there you go.
or right after this.
I didn't list that one because I don't consider it prog. It's just more like fluff,
Well, but that was the direction. They didn't have a purpose. It was like three talented guys, and they kind of hit the peak. They took that break after Brain Salad, and then they did Works. They worked on Works for like 2.5 years. And that was kind of a tepid album. I mean, it had some good stuff on it, but it was mostly solo stuff. And then after that, they just kind of lost the plot. I mean, obviously, even Love Beach shits on this album.
Oh yeah.
I mean, at least you could say Love Beach has Canarios, and there's like on the side long piece, there's like the germ of an idea that had they stayed together in the studio and not left Emerson to finish off the track, maybe it would have turned into something. But yeah, this is brutal.
Yeah,
This is a brutal album.
it is.
Yeah. Shame.
All right,
Talented guys that you never got the sense that they even really liked each other, and they were just kind of trying to rekindle something. And they said, they kept breaking up, breaking up, and then they bring in Keith Olsen, this noted producer. He didn't know what to do with them.
No
He
good.
didn't understand it.
No good.
Bad record.
Yep.
I hate it.
Very bad.
The more I talk about it, the more I hate it.
The more angry you're getting, right?
I feel my blood pressure going up. Luis, you get me that nurse.
Yeah. Maddie.
All right, Eric, what do you got?
Well, I feel bad. I'm not going for the jugular like George. I think this one's an obvious pick. But then again, huge Tall fan. Under Wraps is horrible. The only thing I like on that, I think, is the acoustic. Under Wraps too, I think.
I am your prop.
Or like Lewis, Under Wraps. That's the only listenable song to me on that record, is the acoustic piece.
You know, everybody shits on that record for very many good reasons. The number being equal to the number of tracks. However, I would counter that when they played those songs with different instrumentation, they shine. I think that record is a product of its time in the worst way possible.
Way too many synths and program this and that.
Yes, all those
There's
drum
no
machines
Martin
and all
bar,
this-
there's no
Yeah.
flute. You put all those back into the mix and maybe it's better, right?
When the first time I saw Jethro Tull live, they played 4 songs from that record, but they did them acoustic, and they were absolutely amazing. So, you know, I just want to say that, you know, there is a with Ian Anderson, I find there's a bedrock of quality.
It's hard to hear
just-
it there, though.
It's just that
Yeah.
he really served up a turd.
Agreed.
All right, Stephen.
Well, I'm about to talk about another band that's been mentioned. And the obvious albums maybe been mentioned, but I could have chosen a variety of albums by this band that I know are liked on this panel. I could have chosen this one. I could have chosen this one. But I decided to choose Systematic Chaos. Dream Theater, I don't know. I love the first 5 albums to varying degrees. They were innovators. Genuinely, they were a massive part in creating an entire genre of music. They took things from places that, yeah, lots of people have taken influences from and used them in different ways, but they did something and made it popular and made a million bands copy them. And really, this album should have Metallica written on the front of it. It's just utter nonsense. It's old, tired riffs that are 10 years old that were written by a different band and pieced together to make something that, I mean, James LeBrie's on this album. Why? Why is he here? It's just, he's got no need to be on it. It just makes no sense to me at all. And I think it's an album that's trying to be all things to all men. We can do what we want, be what we want. We can change it. We can mix it up. But they just sound like Metallica. It's nonsense. And yes, it's hidden behind lots and lots of technical wizardry. You know, it's hidden behind fantastic musicianship. I don't really care, to be honest, because it just pieces together lots of bits that just sound like themselves from previous albums or somebody else. And for a band of that stature, that's just not on. I'm just not having it. And it's the last one that I got, and it will probably remain that way. It hit me deep. But yeah, I'd lost my way with them prior to this, but I do not like.
That is, I think, their height of their Franken-Prog era, where they were doing lots of cut and paste and just putting together stuff. It sounds like that to me.
It sounds like that to me. You've
Because
summed
when
that
they
up perfectly.
had Kevin Moore in the band, they were writing songs.
Yeah.
And I mean, the first minute of A Change of Seasons is better than that whole record.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really what it boils down to is you know, you can't fake the songwriting they were doing in the early days. But they got into this treadmill, right? They just had, you know, success. You know, you can't argue with success. The fans were buying them, so they had to just put it out and then go on a 2-year tour cycle and then put out another one and just keep going. You know, so
I like lots and lots of technical music, and I like lots of bands that, you know, are willing to show off, throw their chops in there. But there became a time, and it wasn't just Dream Theater, where it became all about that. It really became about, you know, I'll have a minute in the spotlight. No, I'll have a minute in the spotlight. No, give me a shot. I'll have a moment. And I just think they forget to write songs on this. And it's Lewis is perfect. There's moments where you think, oh, and it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all for the sake of it. And same again, I listened to it yesterday just to make sure that I still don't like it. And an album with this amount of ability on it shouldn't be quite as boring as this is. And it's boring. You can dazzle me all you want, boring.
I think too, I think those last two albums with Portnoy, I think he was listening to a lot of different stuff around that time. And I think all these kind of strange influences were coming into the band, and he was kind of directing, how things were going. And it was a weird time. I think he wanted to try some new things and just didn't work. I mean, I like those albums, but they're not among their best, I don't think.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. They're trying new things, but they don't all sound like they want to.
Yeah.
It's not a band that feels like, we're all doing this together. It feels to me like a band that's kind of going, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
As long as I get a chance to show off for a while, I'll do whatever you fancy. But there you go. There's total silence, complete disagreement. Perfect.
No, I agree with you. I completely agree with you.
All right. Yeah, this album is bad. 1983. I love this band, but they were definitely going downhill, starting with like maybe two albums before this one, the one before this is pretty bad. This is pretty atrocious. Renaissance, Timeline.
Oh,
although Annie looks great, right? That's about the best thing about this album is her and her kind of early 80s new wave hairstyle here. This is just, everything you loved about Renaissance, the big symphonic arrangements, the piano, her gorgeous vocals, this kind of like Baroque classical thing. None of that's here. This is just really bad early 80s synth pop, and that's not what you want to hear out of Renaissance. I mean, she sounds fine on the album, but all the other stuff that you love about this band, that great Rickenbacker bass and the majestic keyboards and the acoustic guitar, all that, it's just all a wash in these really bad synth arrangements. And yeah, this is yuck. There's maybe like one or two halfway decent songs on here. The rest of it is just absolutely unlistenable, as Renaissance anyway. If you want to call it something else, that's fine, but yeah, no good. No good.
I think I saw that tour.
Really?
I think so. What was the album that came before that?
Camera.
Maybe it was the Camera.
That's pretty bad too.
Yeah, there was one of like fairies, the bottom of the garden or something about fairies. I think I saw them at my father's place because their popularity was really waning. It was kind of strange about Renaissance. They were really only popular in the Northeast, US. So after that, outside, they were playing clubs, I think. So by then, they really weren't very popular at all. And I saw him in a club. I remember Annie looked good. She was wearing a short dress. She wasn't wearing the long gown. She was wearing a short dress.
Trying to look a little modern there, for early.
Yeah, it was a bad record. That was a bad record.
Yeah.
The more modern you try to look, the more dated you become.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Lewis.
This is my number 2, right?
Yep.
Okay, my number 2. I'm gonna go with Neil Moore's Testimony, and I want to explain why. Neil Morse is a guy who is immensely talented. Okay, he just writes such beautiful music, and he can do all kinds of things. Formulaic. He's been putting out basically the same record for a while now, but he's like the AC/DC of Prog in a way. However, when Testimony first came out, it was right after he broke up Spock's Beard, right? Or he left Spock's Beard. And I went to see him play in Metuchen in New Jersey. And I remember meeting Neil Morse and talking to him several times. He played at Orion with Spock's Beard. He was a super cool dude, funny, just super fucking cool. And I saw him at the Near Fest when they were going to do Transatlantic, and he was really uptight because they hadn't really rehearsed very well. But he was still a cool dude. We get to Metuchen. I hadn't heard the record. Me and Jeff Laramie, and we get in, and they go on, and everybody's dressed in white on the stage, right? And they start. It's the Gospel by Neil Morse, right? Which I wasn't expecting. It surprised me. I don't mind people's religiosity necessarily. I'm not a religious person. They don't call me Lucifer for nothing. However, it does irritate me after a while when I keep hearing the word suffering over and over and over and over, you know? And then there's like an intermission. And I remember telling Jeff, hey man, you know, why don't we check to see if they closed the doors in this place? Because they had a very cultish vibe in this environment, right? And then they all come out in black, or maybe it was the other way around. It started in black and then they come out in white. I forget, but it was this really weird, like not a Spock's Beard kind of an event. It was a very strange thing, right? And then at the end of the show, he was out there and I went to say hi to him. And he saw me and he recoiled like the devil himself was approaching, which made me laugh, but also just kind of accentuated the weirdness for the whole thing for me. And from that point on, I began to be very conflicted with his output because I liked the music. But, you know, I honestly think that Spock's Beard had songs that had more spiritual messages without hitting you over the head with that particular sledgehammer, you know? And I just find it difficult to ignore it because he's got such great diction. I know a lot of people like to say, the lyrics don't matter. No, I can hear every fucking syllable. And it gets on my nerves. So I find it very difficult to reconcile the two. And I have always, that record in particular, I just developed a lot of bad associations with it. And I really grew to hate it because it was like the end of an era for me with that guy, and also just with his music, which was very important to me. I was a big Spock's Beard fan in the 90s. I thought Spock's Beard were the shit. I still do in some ways. You know, those, you know, Day for Night and some of those records just fucking killer, you know? And then Testimony came up, and that, I'm not going to say it hurt my feelings, but it did disappoint me. And it angered me. And I just sort of recoiled away from Neil. And I haven't really followed him. I bought many of his records though, because the music is good. Like I bought the Question Mark album. I bought one. I bought a few extra ones, but I stopped after a while. I just stopped because I just couldn't handle it. Like I know he made the Jesus Christ the Exorcist. There is zero chance in hell I will ever buy that record. This is just a fact. But
Apparently you and a lot of people.
yeah. But I had to say it. That's why I was so happy when Stephen mentioned Neil Morse, because yeah, I'm not behind him as I once was, you know.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Neil is a genuinely nice guy.
Yeah.
He is.
I mean, I haven't spoken with him in a while, but going back to the Spock's Beard days, we used to have really nice conversations, doing business with him, with Radiant Records. He's always been very cool, totally genuine. He's a good dude. I like the guy personally.
Yes.
You know, I'm Jewish, you know, when all those albums started coming out, I was like, check please. You know, that was, I hadn't seen him in a while. I saw him play at Rossfest and I was really enjoying it. I mean, the band was great, and he's great on stage. He's just a super talent. And I was really getting into it. And about 90 minutes into it, there was a rear projection. The cross went up, and I was like, okay, I'm out of here. You know, I've done my time.
Yep.
You know, but he's good. He's a good dude. I'm disappointed to hear that he recoiled in horror to seeing you.
It was funny.
I can't imagine why.
I don't know. I'm a nice guy. I look ugly, but I'm friendly.
Well,
You know, he knew me. It's not like I didn't surprise him. He just like, he like, oh no, we're not talking right now. Like, come on, Neil. What happened to all the other jokes?
All right, is everybody ready?
We are ready for.
Hi, George, lay it on us.
There's a little transition here. The first three I said I don't hate. I don't even dislike them really. I just find them flat for me. They don't touch me in any way. These top two I really dislike. This one has already been called, is Soft Machine Third. This album to me is a big mess. It's chaotic, meandering, pointless. The vocals are terrible. The production's terrible. For guys that are going to play this much, you'd think they'd be better players. not hearing it on any level. I find it quite annoying, actually. The fact that it's a double disc blows my mind. That someone said, "Let's make another disc of this." It's unbelievable for me. But Soft Machine third.
Thank you, George.
Got to back up my buddy here.
Leo just turned over a couple times. That's all right.
Sorry, Leo.
All right, Ken.
All right, so I got to put this in context. So in the late 70s, there wasn't a lot of prog going on. I mean, punk was popular, and all the magazines and newspapers that were around, Trouser Press in the US, we had, Melody Maker and Sounds, New Musical Express, all the newspapers in the UK, they were always shitting on prog. But every once in a while, they would leak these rumors about reunions or new bands that would form from, notable prog guys. I remember one time there was one they talked about. It was supposed to be Steve Hackett, Rick Wakeman, I think it was Jack Bruce, and maybe like Bill Bruford. I mean, it was all bullshit. But then they announced Asia. And I thought that was going to be unbelievable, right? The hype for Asia. I mean, you think about it, right? All the guys that were in that band, this thing is going to be the shit, right? This is going to be the album that's going to revitalize prog. So right when that was happening, I was actually in the outdoor advertising business, but we had a side business in music publishing. So I'm actually in my office in Manhattan. I had a nice little stereo. And the day Asia came out, I snuck into the Time Warner Company store because at the time, WEA was distributing Geffen. And I snuck in there into their subsidized store. And I brought back to the office for $2.99. I brought back the first Asia album. I put that album on. And when that album was done, I took it and I chucked it across the room. I was so pissed off at that album. I mean, that album was just one big Coke deal. I mean, it was just, it was just AOR radio fodder, and it just stripped all the guys of their self-respect. I mean, granted, from what I understand, it was like number one in the charts for like 2 months. It made them all the money they should have made when they were back in the when they were in King Crimson and what have you, But so good for them. But man, there was a lot of bad music going on right around then. There was very little good music. There was very little progressive music. And then everybody just kind of bought into the hype and the album exploded. But I got to tell you, not at my place, not in Forest Hills, Queens. and then I went to see them. And I remember going to see them, and they did this song called Midnight Sun. And when they did Midnight Sun, it was like, this is what the next album's gonna be. Because they did it was like 9-10 minutes long. They stretch out, and it's got this nice sort of prog interlude. And then that second Asia album came out, and that tune was on there. It was cut down to like 4 minutes. The first Asia album, I hate that album. It's a shit record.
Yes.
It is just not a good record. I mean, yeah.
It is yes, I completely agree. It's start to end.
I thought everybody's good, and I figured all the comments later, everybody's gonna be tearing me a new asshole. But I figured, after George's comments, I'm safe.
That Asia album is so fucking bad.
It's a bad record. I mean, and people made a big deal about the production about that. I think it was a guy named Mike Stone. Man, that was just so vanilla. It was just that was a bad record. I hate that.
If there wasn't a bunch of legendary prog guys, do you think it's a better album?
I would listen to it in a different context, that's for sure. I mean, I'm not much of an AOR fan, but that to me was a bunch of talented musicians getting shoehorned into a formula. And think about those four guys, what they could have created. And look at the results. Heat of the moment, really? I mean, you know, come on. That was
Great album cover, though.
it was a great album cover. Yeah, it really was. But I mean, that was just not. Oh man. I remember. Oh God, I remember. I saw them in Forest Hills. I broke up with my girlfriend the next day. It was terrible.
Bad memories all around, huh?
Oh yeah, it was just. Somebody said to me, I remember I was sitting there, and somebody said, "Do you want to go backstage? Would you want people?" Just a couple that was sitting. I think they worked for MTV or something, and I was chatting with them before the show, and he said, "Would you like passes to go backstage?" I'm like, "No, no, I don't." What would I say to Carl Palmer at this point? Man, Carl, that show was a flaming pile of poo. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it was better live. I mean, they made a show of it, but the songs were crap.
I've clearly been doing this wrong all these years because I buy tickets for shows for bands and albums that I like.
You know what? Yeah, it was almost like a ritual, and it was and you got to also keep the context. There was nothing going on then. We went because who else was I going to go see? What was that 1981, I think? 1982, something like that.
82.
Yeah, I mean, there was nobody. No, those guys. That's what they were doing. You know, it's like you just went. You know, you had to see it for yourself. See if it was real. What you heard on record. If it could be even worse live. I don't know. You just went.
All right, Eric.
All right, well, I'm following Ken's footsteps. This is another group that was put together with a couple Prog guys, and this is the best review. At least it's hearsay, but I believe this is the review that came out for the record. If you can see that.
I know what he's going to say. Yeah.
GTR, and I believe the review just said SHT, and there's nothing more. I mean, it was a pile of crap. I can't stand Max Bacon's voice. Just overproduced garbage pop. I think the only thing that was good in there was Hackett's Hack It to Bits and the Sketches in the Sun by Steve Howe, his acoustic piece. Just it's a terrible album, start to finish. And unfortunately, that's not a shocker. But I had to put it in there because and I went out and bought it. And I had heard the single and I still went and bought it. But awful record.
I saw though, and it was that was also on my list. You know, it was a great idea on paper. I thought.
Yeah, should have been a great
guitar
album.
players. But Mac and Jonathan Mover was a great drummer. Phil Spaulding, I don't know, he was a bass player, and Max Bacon was a shitty vocalist.
Yeah, awful.
And I you know, they had the one hit song, and it was a great idea. And live, the show opened up with Howe and Hackett first doing individuals, like 10 minutes each or so, and then 10 minutes together. And then the band came out and they ran through the album. And, Hack It to Bits wasn't that a reworking of?
Yeah, it was
Please Don't Touch?
Please Don't Touch. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, just like renamed, and there was so much potential there of what that album could have been. Those are two guitarists. I mean, Pete, you're a guitar player. I mean, you know, to me, they were like two guitarists, great guitar players that really had no chemistry together.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, on paper, that should have been great.
Yeah.
Didn't work, unfortunately. Oh, well. Steven.
Well, for my number two, I've actually chosen an album by a band that I know it's not their worst. I know that there's at least three, arguably four, depending on how you want to classify the band, that are worse than this. But I really dislike what it stands for. I really dislike what it says about the band. I dislike what it says about Prog. It's egotistical. It's pretentious. and it was badly in need of somebody that would crack the whip and tell them what they should be doing. And realistically, in 1, 2, 3 easy lessons, you get this, which could have been an utterly brilliant album. This could have been the best thing they ever did. If you imagine that you've got the talent of Emerson, Lake and Palmer taking a side each, but basically just not playing with each other at all until they get to the bit at the end to keep people happy. Listen to these songs and imagine what they could have done if they'd worked together on them. If they'd actually made, I mean, especially Emerson's side, into an ELP album instead of 3 solo albums and 2 songs, one of which, I mean, Fanfare for the Common Man, I still think is a great piece of music. Pirates is good, if a bit long, for want of a better turn of phrase. But this is a band that isn't a band. This is 3 solo albums thrown together. And I don't need an album, a side of ballads. I just don't need that to happen. It's just one of those on an album, a couple, maybe. I can live with that.
Mhm.
But to waste that talent for them to be in such a situation where there was nobody around to say, this is wrong, what are we doing this for? This is crazy. So it's not even so much the musical endeavour. There is some really good stuff on here. All 3 of the individuals put some really good stuff on there. But it's a band falling apart. What came after, what Ken's spoken about, it all stems from here. It all stems from a band, and I know it was indicative of the time, not being able to take a step back and go, actually, maybe a solo album is the right thing to do right now. Maybe it would be better if I parked my ego over here and we worked together. I mean, yeah, okay, these guys, they didn't particularly like each other a huge amount, if you believe what you hear. But they worked together. The chemistry was phenomenal through a lot of arguing and, you know, but this to me is what happens when ego takes over from music. And what you've got is a good album that should have been a phenomenal album. And when you consider what it followed, that to me is the most damning thing about this. And it has the potential, even now, listening to it now, especially Emerson said, if you imagine Palmer adding the power to that, some lyrics here and there, this would have been outstandingly good. As it is, it's okay. That's a travesty for me. So Emerson, Lake and Palmer, The Works is my number 2, even though I actually quite like this.
I have a very different perspective for that record. So they were, at the time that where they were done touring Brain Salad, they were arguably the biggest band in the world, and bigger than Zeppelin. And they went, and I think you're right. I mean, I don't think that they particularly loved each other, but they were burnt out and they went off to do solo material. But they were given carte blanche. I mean, if you think about within the context of what Works is, who would release that? You know, what label would release that? So they should have done 3 solo albums. And, you know, Emerson had this piano concerto he had to get out of his system. They had talked about, I remember reading interviews where they talked about they could have gone out and they thought about what they would do after Brain Cell. They talked about doing an acoustic album. They talked about doing another, you know, trio album, but they wanted to do, or at least Emerson wanted to do something with an orchestra. And he had this piano concerto he wanted to get out of the system. You know, Greg, he writes ballads. That's what he wants to do. Carl's side, I think, is by far the most adventurous thing on the whole set. But then again, within the context, when you're like the biggest band in the world, and you're this sort of bombastic prog rock band, well, what's the next step? Well, let's record with an orchestra, and that's when you get Pirates, and then you get, you know, then you have Fanfare for the Common Man. You know, all the short tunes were on Works Volume 2, which was not a particularly good album. I mean, you know, there's some good bits on there, but it's just like kind of like Works leftovers. But I think again, obviously, Ahmet Ertegun said, you go, guys, you do what you want to do. You take your time and you make the album you want to make. And this is the album they wanted to make. Clearly, it was not a commercial endeavor. It wasn't like they tried to make something commercial, because there's nothing commercial about that record.
I don't actually know if it is the album that they wanted to make. It's the album. It's the album that Keith Emerson wanted to make. Nobody else quite knew what to do.
Well, the thing is also, one of the things that you're missing, Steve, is that Carl Palmer composed and recorded a percussion concerto that got left off, and that wound up coming out years later on an anthology, called Palmer Anthology. Carl should have done a solo album. He had enough material for a solo album. I'm sure they all did, but would it have been like the Kiss solo albums? Maybe, maybe it just would have been more of the same. I mean, I'm not a connoisseur of classical composition, I would think, but I have a feeling that most people who would think of Emerson's side as kind of amateurish in a sense. I don't know. Greg's side, to me, they're just ballads, singer-songwriter ballads. That's what he was doing. Carl, as I said, Carl's side, I think he's got Joe Walsh on there. He's got all kinds of, I think the Meters are on there. There's all kinds of great people playing on there. And it's kind of eclectic with the skewed towards percussion, which is obviously his thing. He went off to study tuned percussion. He spent, I think, 2 years studying tuned percussion. He's a masterful percussionist. And then they got back together, and then they cut the long pieces, again, incorporating the orchestra. That was their thing. If they were going to get back together, they wanted to work with an orchestra.
Yeah, and it's not the orchestra thing that I have the problem with. You've actually hit the nail on the head for where my issue lies. And that is that they wanted to work with an orchestra, but they didn't. They did it individually. And you've said that Emerson's side was quite amateurish by classical standards. By classical standards,
I would assume
I agree with that. But if you look at what he'd done prior, you could argue that if you'd taken the other two guys out of that, you'd end up with the same thing. What made that band so good was three guys doing this.
Yeah,
that's what made the band so good. So when you do that with them, it's okay. Do that with them, and it's fantastic. And that's my problem with the works, is it's them doing this.
It never sounded like a band album to me.
No, but it's not a band album. It's funny because it is the Kiss solo albums. It just happens to be in one package.
Would you have liked the album better if had they done 3 solo albums, and then there was Pirates, Fanfare, and let's say the best tracks from Works Volume 2? Would that have been a better album for you?
I probably would have liked it better, but I think I would like it better if the struggles and the arguments that made the first 4 albums so good had happened during the works and made that album as good as it could be. That's what it misses. It misses the strife that made their work really good. When you read what they speak to about each other, say about each other, they didn't really have a problem with each other, but they argued about music all the time.
Yeah, sure.
And that's what made the music good. But when the arguments stopped, the music becomes okay. And that's where my issue is.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about the works, I think. Sorry, everybody. It's an interesting discussion, if not, well, I think it is.
Yeah. All right, my number 2. Actually listened to this again just before we went on air today, just to make sure I dislike it as much as I always have. And I'll say I can actually pinpoint maybe 3 tracks on here I kind of dig. The rest of it is still just as bad as I always thought. Yes, Open Your Eyes. Most of this is pretty dreadful. I mean, this is like taking like the 90125 era Yes and maybe watering it down even a little bit more. It's very poppy. I think John Anderson sounds great on this album, but the production is really like squeaky clean. And, New York's New State of Mind, open title track, and maybe The Solution are pretty decent. You got some interesting guitar work from Steve Howe on here, but you got, Billy Sherwood. I believe this is the first album where he starts to infiltrate himself into the Yes ranks. And I don't know. It's just, I don't like the keyboard sounds on here. In fact, I don't even remember who plays keyboards on here. Was anybody playing keyboards on here? Or is this like Igor, whatever his name was? I don't even know. It's a very kind of squeaky 90s attempt at Yes. I don't really like it much. I hated this with a passion back in the day. I saw them on this tour, not one of my favorite tours. But yeah, listening to it now, a couple tracks are okay. The rest of it, garbage. No good.
Garbage, straight up.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right, the final. What do you got, Lewis?
Well, there can be only one, right? For me, the ultimate turd of Prague has got to be John Anderson, Elias of Sun Hillow. That is everything that I
Do we
hate
have to
about-
drink?
No, we don't
Anthony?
have to drink because I mean, you want, you can if you want, but that is to me a compendium of everything that sucks about Prague and none of the good things in one place. It is a waste of great guests. Or I think he had some people help him, right? If I'm not mistaken, maybe he did everything himself. But I really hate it even more just because people seem to like it so much. I'm like, what are you listening to? The lyrics are
Anthony, if you're
annoying-
watching, I know this is your favorite part of the show right here.
annoying to a degree that I can't even begin to elucidate. Everything about it is just like it just grates on my nerves, and it's been like a albatross around my neck for years. Because whenever people realize that I like Prog, they always say, "Hey, you must love Elias." I'm like, "No, dude, I fucking hate that record. That record is shit." Why would anybody like that record? And it's like, I think also part of me, I have never been a fan of John Anderson. I have always enjoyed Yes in spite of him. And I think that I really grew to dislike him immensely when I started to see Yes live, and I started to see his banter and I remember one time he had the fucking balls. It was probably, in the 90s. They opened a show with Circus of Heaven. Who the fuck does that? Come on. But then, all right, you already did a very bad thing, right? But then you stop and you are not satisfied with the level of applause you have received for this affront. And you're all dressed in white and you stand there and you're like, give me more. And I remember thinking, oh my God. If I had a pint glass, I would throw it at him. But I don't, so I can't. And it just began a series of unfortunate events for me and him in shows. Another time I went to see the whole band. It was after the Russian guy had been kicked out for fondling some air stewardess somewhere. And it was back to Wakeman and those guys. And he started serenading his wife from the stage. And he went on this whole rant about it. And I was... You know how sometimes even in an amphitheater, it can get quiet enough where you can yell something and they can hear it? I yelled at him. I said, get on with it.
Lewis, this song's for you.
And I saw the look that Rick Wakeman gave because he heard it and he smiled. So I know that I wasn't alone in my displeasure. And Howe was glaring malevolently from his corner of the stage. So yeah, this guy, he's just not my kind of guy, And the Planet Elias is just not my vibe, I just can't stand behind any of it. I hate it. I fucking hate it. And I don't care. I know a lot of people are going to be upset. I know a lot of people are going to have multiple aneurysms, and they're going to have, a rash in their crotch and all kinds of other results from this. But we all hear these things differently, and I have always heard it the same, and I have always despised it. So this
Oh.
is not for me.
Fair enough. Cool. All right, George.
Well, you disappointed Anthony, so I'll disappoint Chuck. My number one is Vandergraaf Generator, Pawn Hearts. I hate this album.
I can imagine, yeah.
Peter Hamill is the gotta be the biggest asshat ever behind a microphone. This guy, the style is terrible, the voice is terrible, and this music is so ballyhooed, and I don't hear anything special about any of it. If it was the best music ever, it can't overcome this guy on the mic. He is an individual, I'll give him that, but it's an individual I don't want to ever hear again. So I'll say Vandergraaf Generator, Pawn Hearts.
I don't know how you follow that.
You can't. You have owned this show, George, from beginning
George,
to
yeah.
end.
Oh man. Oh God.
George's hatred for these prog classics is like,
Ken, if you want to collect yourself, I can follow George.
Oh, Pete.
That was my number one.
wow, two of you. Holy cow.
Oh, God. Pete, you want to
And
make some
all I'll
money?
say is, and I'll let Ken go because I don't have anything to add to George. I can't listen to Peter Hamill. I just can't. And sorry, Charles, same thing. Sorry, Charles.
All right, Chuck.
I've tried. I can't listen to them. And I shouldn't, I probably don't go as deep as George where I think it's just me. I don't like them. I don't necessarily think it's awful, but I can't listen to it. I can't make any connection to the music and I can't listen to Peter Hamill.
Oh, man.
Back to you, Ken.
Pete, you gotta make like a voodoo doll of George. You'll make a fortune. You'll make an absolute fortune. Absolutely. George will be walking around like,
Damn it, Ken, you're poking me again.
You feel like
Ken must be
Genesis.
listening to Pawn Hearts. Shit.
Oh man, somebody's listening to porn. All right, so my number one is a really obscure album, but in the prog world, it's legendary for its awfulness. So I'm going to read you the musicians that perform on this album. John Anderson. You
What a
probably heard of,
shocker.
you probably heard of a few of these guys. You got John Anderson, Rick Wakeman, Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins, Robert Fripp. You got three guys from Vandergraaf. You got Peter Hamill, Nick Potter, Guy Evans, Davy Johnstone from Elton John's band, right? Linda Hoyle from Affinity. You got Dave Caffinetti and Steve Gould from Rare Bird, Jane Ralph, the original singer from, the original Renaissance, and Rod Clements from Lindisfarne. So you've got that lineup, and you think that it's got to be the greatest progressive rock album of all time. Like, how could it not be? Instead, it's this album put together by a British folk singer named Colin Scott, and it sucks in the worst way possible. So, his real name was Colin Thistlethwaite, and that's the most interesting thing about the album. It's just this boring folk sort of pop music with anonymous contributions from this all-star cast. Yeah, did I jump over the fact that Fripp is even playing on it? It's like somebody has to take this album out behind the barn and shoot it. It's just put it out of its misery because it's been haunting the prog universe since it came out in the early 70s. It's just a terrible, terrible record.
I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and good. You're so lucky. And it's one of these albums you keep coming across. And, growing up, we used to see this album listed in the Gem catalog. And it came out in the US on Import, which was Gem Records label, in-house label. It's like, what a cast. Oh my God, this thing is going to blow my mind. And it blows your mind for the wrong reasons, because it just kept sucking and sucking and sucking, and it never stopped sucking until it was over.
I hate that. I hate those puncture lung albums.
Oh,
They're terrible.
I know it's granted it's not a famous album, but it is, for those who know, it's a famously bad album with an incredible lineup.
Has Steve Feigenbaum ever given it a review?
I don't know. I think I've spoke to Steve about it, and he said, "Yeah, that's a bad album."
Yeah,
It just is. Esoteric reissued it. Like, why?
of course they did.
I know why, because it's got Robert Fripp and John Anderson and all these people on it. And so, yeah, let's put that out again and let's sucker everybody into buying it because it sucks.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, you should go out of your way to hear it. Or not.
We're not.
I will. I'm
know.
gonna wait until I get out of the hospital, and then I'm gonna give it a listen.
It might. Oh, you're in the hospital?
Well, this is not actually my room, but
Oh.
I'm actually gonna wait. I'm gonna wait just so I have a little bit of a different context, and then I'm gonna listen to it.
Can I ask you a question?
Sir, you may ask me anything. You know I love you a long time.
I love you. Why do you have a yellow raincoat hanging by?
This is my wife's.
Oh, okay.
She just put it there.
Okay. Just wanted to know. It's nice.
It's a nice color to the background.
Yeah, it's a nice contrast.
Yeah, it's not.
Nice contrast.
It's more colorful than my usual black stuff, right?
It's nice contrast with the blood. So
It is. It's for her biking.
Cool.
She once got run over by a car, and now she is very colorful. And she came to the ER in this hospital years ago.
Wow. Okay.
But she's fine, as you saw her earlier. Ursula is alive and well, and yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, man, this has been I'm gonna have to hear that record now. You have infected me with the curiosity of it.
It's just so ordinary, and it just has the most incredible people, and they're just like they're all emasculated. I mean, it's just yeah.
That's nothing like wasting talents, right? No good.
That lineup. How could I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Poor. That was my number one.
All
Nobody
right.
wanted to lead, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, Colin Scott did, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
Colin Thistlewaite.
all right. So Eric had Van de Graaff as well. So Stephen, what do you got for number one?
Well, this entire show, we've been all throwing lots of bands and people under the bus. So I thought it was only fair to finish my choices by throwing myself under the bus, because I have spent an awful long time telling everybody that they're wrong, that this band are still fantastic, that different eras of their output are phenomenal, and that they should all give them a chance. And yet, Marillion.com is a big pile of tripe.
Oh,
It's just the most.
yes.
It's horrible. I mean, I've still got. I'm going to struggle to get this out because this is a shitty second-hand, battered version that I will not replace because I've already spent whatever I spent on this, and the pictures are too small to see, and that's probably a good thing. But I have a good friend who's on here somewhere because these people paid for this album to be made. This was the archetypal. This was the first. This was the crowdfunding project. And my friend said, "Oh, you've got to come and hear it. I've got this," because he got it before everybody else did. He had it before it was released officially, and he put on the song "Deserve," and I thought, "This is Crowded House. What's happening? What is going on here?" And then we got to Rich, the song "Rich." And it goes do 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 do. I thought it's the Stranglers being covered by the Beach Boys. What's happening here? How did we get to this point where the best song on the album, Interior Lulu, is nonsense? It's utter garbage. I mean, Go, to be fair to the band, they play that live and it works. But it's the most polite ramble of turgid nonsense on the album itself. I mean, Enlightened, totally in the dark. The whole thing is just pish. It's awful. I mean, it's Marillion, and there's 5 songs mixed by Stephen Wilson. I mean, I should be doing indecent things to this album. It's bloody rubbish. It's terrible. It's so bad that I put it on today and thought, am I a different universe? These people can't have made this record. When you hear what came before, and I like what comes after, I really like what comes after. It's awful. It's absolutely awful.
I just
And
want to
I
thank
will-
you for using the word pish. Thank you very much for that.
So, well, it's pish. It's utter pish.
Yes.
That's what it
Utter
is.
pish.
And they took their fans' money to do that.
They took their fans' money to do that willingly. And to be fair, they've repeated the process numerous times afterwards. And I will probably be chased for saying this because the fans are acolytes. And I count myself as one of those fans. There's only one act I can think that I've seen more times live than Marillion. And I adore most of the catalogue. Every band is allowed a stinker. Wow, man, oh man. I mean, how we didn't smell it when they were making it, I don't know. That's how much it stinks. It's awful.
I always wonder about that. Do you ever think, like, what goes through a band's mind when they're recording an album? Does it reach a point where they know we're making a shitty album? And they just kind of keep, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just, at what point do they say, oh man, we got to finish this thing, but this album blows? You know?
Marillion are an interestingly candid band when they're asked about their albums a few years down the line. And I don't think any of them like this album. And that, to me, that's quite remarkable. Now, people are bound to disagree with that because there'll be quotes somewhere that'll tell you, because every new album is the best album. That's just the way that it works. But you read the more recent comments and how standoffish they are about it, how they've tried to rework the things live. They've tried some of them when they play acoustic. They're trying to find the goodness in what is shite.
Stephen, my experience kind of in the same thing as Radiation, which I didn't like at all.
It was
I saw
close,
them-
but These Chains saved Radiation, and .com I can't find the good song.
But when I saw them for Fear in 2016, they did 3 Minute Boy, which killed live.
Yeah.
But it never hit me. I mean, that record never hit me anyway, but I thought it was amazing when they played it live, and it's probably just being there and you're kind of wrapped up and everything. But that was the record for me where I'm like, I just can't anymore. I got to listen first before I buy, and I don't normally do that. I don't stream, but that record was the end for me in terms of buying without hearing it first.
I must admit that those two, .com and Radiation together, the band seemed to be in a strange place. They couldn't find labels. They were going to the fans to fund the albums, and the fans loved doing it. Nobody was forced to do that. But those two albums really, really missed the point, to the extent they've actually remixed Radiation and put it out, I think, in 2013 as Radiation 2013. And I bought it thinking, maybe the great album is in there. But to me, it's better than this one, and by quite a distance. But what I will say is that you're right as well, because live, I think to appreciate Latter Day Marillion, and here I am, I'm about to big them up again now, I can't help myself. You have to see them live to understand them. And that's probably to their detriment, and apart from some of the albums. But anyway, the point of this is .com is garbage.
I agree.
Speaking of garbage, something about some of these great 70s prog bands doing stuff as the 80s started to move on didn't make for a good combination. Gowdy by the Alan Parsons Project. Yeah, exactly. You can safely do this because this is no good. It starts off okay with what is it, La Sagrada Familia, but man, the rest of it is just bad pop music. I mean, at least, the Alan Parsons Project in their heyday, they merged great pop music, really good pop music with sophisticated instrumentation, great production, nice prog flourishes, great musicianship, great vocals. You don't get none of that here. I mean, this is just boring, pappy pop. Doesn't sound great. The songs aren't memorable, and it's boring. And most of the really great Alan Parsons albums are really memorable, really fun. This is a chore to listen to get all the way through. And like I said, it starts off with the best song in the album, and then it goes downhill right from there. Don't like it. And I think this was, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't this the last one? I think their final one. Yeah, thought so.
and their best stuff sounds fantastic, and that album sounds not fantastic.
No, yeah. That was the final nail in the coffin, unfortunately. So there you have it, everybody. Prog albums we hate or we dislike very much. And
Hate.
surely some of these, a lot of you love, including some of us here, right?
Yeah.
Right. Let the mudslinging begin.
Yes.
Can I throw a couple of honorable mentions out?
Yes, go right ahead.
Please do.
I'll be brief with these. After Old Loves Die Hard, Triumvirate made two really bad albums. One called A La Carte, and then one that was even worse, if that was even possible, called Russian Roulette, which they were just like awful pop music coming from a band called Triumvirate. It had nothing to do with what they did before. And then one other album I had was from a band that I used to work with. I released their first two albums, prog metal band, Circus Maximus. And they made an album called 9 for Frontiers, which to me just took the band in completely the wrong direction. It's totally like AOR. There's a couple of decent tracks on there, but it's just a shadow of what that band was. I mean, they were just, I thought, a mega talent that was going to explode, and they just went off in the wrong direction. And it sucks. It's a shit record. Sorry, guys. Not a good one.
Really good band.
They were.
Yeah.
Were. And then and you could see the AOR element creeping in, but they were on Frontiers, and that was kind of like the Frontiers thing.
Yeah.
And obviously I assume there was external influence on the band to move in that direction. And I think they were even getting popular in Japan. But for 9, there's nothing there.
Cool.
That's what
Anything
I
else,
got. Oh,
Ken?
and I had GTR. We talked about GTR. Was mine.
Most of mine have already been mentioned, so I won't bother with my honorables because talked enough about Under Wraps and Giant for a Day and all that.
Yeah, I didn't have much, but Tony Banks pushed very hard to make an appearance in mine, because for a guy that was in a band that was so exciting and so innovative, how his own music can be quite so boring, I'm not sure. So he was close.
He
The
never
Flower
made it.
Kings,
Yeah, his
Pardon?
solo albums are not good.
yeah, they're not good. None of his solo stuff's great. The Flower Kings tried hard to get in for me. I've discussed them in the prog seat before. It just doesn't work for me at all. I just don't understand them. It's prog by numbers for me. Talented people, but prog by numbers. The Gentle Storm, if anyone remembers that. Ian Lucassen. If I want to go and buy an album that has those sort of classical pretensions, I'll go and buy it from someone that should be doing it. That same again, that's just lack of boundaries. But there you go, that's enough. There's more.
I can throw one.
Sure.
Arion. The Human Equation.
Really?
I have never understood that band. It's like they have all the elements. They just can't bake the cake for me. They have all these great guests. I remember they had Bruce Dickinson singing in one of them earlier, and
Yep.
all these great people. But then talk about prog by numbers. I mean, it is really like this is like one of those like children's books that you color. It's like it's very predictable. Everything that happens, it's very, very, very predictable, and people love it. But I don't find it exciting. I find it very. It's like AOR with a little twist of prog. Is what it sounds like to me. And I've never understood it. And I know they have massive followings. I know that, in fact, I know people from Chicago who've traveled to Holland to see the guy play, because he doesn't really do very many shows, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, he's a big dude. He moves a lot of product, and he's got money. But I have never really understood it or been able to stand behind it. I started with the Electric Castle, because everybody told me I should listen to it. They thought I would like it. I bought it, and at Orion Studios, I wasn't digging it. Then came the ones about the black holes and all that with Bruce Dickinson. I got those. Nope. And then somebody gave me the human equation. I don't know who did that, but somebody, it just arrived in my mailbox. I didn't buy it. And that was the end for me. I haven't heard anything since.
Yeah, there's a bombasticness.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
either love it or you don't, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for me, you've just described their sweet spot.
Yeah, yeah. Me too.
Yeah, I just you know. But on the other hand, I can say that you know, there's a lot of that like 80s neo prog that I wasn't really digging back in the day, but now I am, you know, I'm much more comfortable with it in some sense. You know, it's like especially because I've had the ability to meet some of the people and actually perform with them. So when you actually get to learn the songs and you hang with them, it's a different experience. You know, like if you just get the records, it's you know, but you know, some of these guys are really, really interesting people. And I've been very lucky to, I've played some shows with Clive Nolan. I played some shows with Christina Booth. And not only are they great musicians, but they're really, really great people. So for me, that also changes the equation, right? Because I get to see the music from the person who made it, right? And it does make a difference. It really does for me, you know. But if you just have the I mean, Interior Lulu is a song I will never like. And I like the guys in Marillion. You know, these are really cool guys. You know, I love Marillion, but that song is just so bad, you know, that I can't defend it. You know, I don't think they can defend it either. You know.
Oh boy. All right, everybody. So yeah, a lot of hate tonight, but in a fun, we're kind of
in a loving way. These
in
are
a loving
people-
way. We're poking fun. Yeah, these are all bands.
These are some of these guys are my personal friends.
Yeah, these are all
And,
bands we really love. But
yeah,
you know what?
and
Every band has clunkers, right? That's just the way it goes.
I was just disappointed none of you picked one of my records because that would have been really fun.
Because your records are all really good, right? So there you have it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. But you know, we all know you're lying.
Roger Waters is never going to speak to me again.
Yeah.
All right, so for everybody watching, in the comments below, please fill in some of your prog fusion, prog metal albums that you just can't get into, you can't stand. So put them in the comments below. We'll all be checking them out and seeing what you come up with. And meanwhile, it's like, as we said before, we obviously know that there's going to be many of you watching who actually love some of these albums that we can't stand. But remember, we all hear these albums differently. So just because we don't like them doesn't mean you can't love them. We just don't, right? But I'm sure there's plenty of albums that other folks love or hate that we love, vice versa. It's just the way of the world, because it'd be pretty damn boring if we all like the same stuff, right? So
yeah, if we're all in the orbit of planet Elias.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's see. So make sure you, if you get a chance, head on over to lasercd.com. That's Ken Golden's wonderful website with all sorts of prog and fusion and prog metal delights for sale. Great website, great stuff. Ken, anything new that's come in this week or that you want to?
We got in the new Rob Reid from Magenta. We got his new solo album just popped up. We've actually just sold out at Dream Theater. So the new PFM album just dropped. Yep, good. I think it's real good. New PFM album just dropped recently last week. I'm trying to think if there's any other, if there's anything else new and exciting. Bear with me 1 second and I'll tell you. Rob Reid is the big thing. Also, oh, actually, you know what's really good album that I recommend? Guys, you remember Diagonal, the British band?
Yeah.
So this is their fourth album. Their third album really sucked. I don't know what went wrong with the band, but their fourth album, their new album, which is a very clever name, it's called Four, and very imaginative title. and it's really good. So it's a prog rock album, and that's kind of the big thing for the moment.
Cool. Sounds good. So and stay tuned tomorrow on the channel, everybody. We've got Steven's going to be reviewing this brand new Emerson, Lake and Palmer book, in-depth look at the book, and that's coming up on the channel tomorrow, as well as my review of the new Dream Theater CD, new Bebop Deluxe Live in the Air Age triple disc set, and then brand new Hawkwind album. So all that's coming up tomorrow. You don't want to miss any of that. Hop on over to our website, www.seatranquility.org. Lots of reviews happening there as well. We've got over 23,000 of them as we celebrate 20 years on the internet. So thanks for watching, everybody. For Stephen Reid, Eric Porter, George Lamie, Ken Golden, and Louis Nasser, who needs a big congratulations for joining us tonight.
It was a pleasure. I love hanging with you guys.
There you
I
go.
love doing this. Thank you for having me.
You got it. We're excited you could make it. This was a lot of fun. And stay tuned next week where we'll be more positive conversations, I think.
We'll be back to a regularly scheduled Love Fest.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So
who's going to be in the hospital next week? Tune in to find out.
I think it's going to be Anthony.
I was going to say probably Anthony, because he's going to get over having a heart attack from here.
I just laid him out with my takedown of Elias. And by the way, you guys I didn't tell the story, but when John Anderson played in Mexico City, he really fucked it up so badly that when Ian Anderson came the next week to play with with Jethro Tull, he had to clarify on the radio that they were not in fact related. So I just want to say that my stories with this guy, they go long and deep. And it's just like, some people are just not meant to be, I just can't do it. Napoleon has his fans and God bless him, but he ain't for me.
This is an expose.
Yeah. But Anthony, don't worry. Louis loves you anyway. So.
Oh, I love Anthony. I hate his fucking obsession with Elias, but but yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. And once again, for Stephen and Eric and George and Ken and Louis, I am Pete, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
Have a good night.